This is My Cars Shop.
Hi, Crime Stoppers. Oh, sorry, wrong channel. Welcome back, Shop Rats. Today it's another Talk About It Tuesday, and we're going to talk about money. Money is an interesting subject. It's something that we all need. It's something that we all desire for the most part, and it's an energy form that is required to make most things happen. I mean, let's face it, we can't build old cars without some money somewhere at some time. There's just stuff you gotta buy. Now, there's a lot of misunderstandings about money, and we've had videos where we talk about the wealth mindset versus being rich and all kinds of other stuff like that. But where I want to come at this today from is not to beat a dead horse, but to look at it from the same philosophy we approach the entire channel, and that is little bites. I often have people look at the number of cars that I have and say, man, you must be so wealthy, you must be so rich to have that many cars. And the reality is, no, I am just really, really, really frugal and refuse to spend anything more than I have to fulfill my dreams. It's the reality. I've lived life when I've had a lot of money, and I've lived life when I've had no money, but somehow there's always a way where there's a will. Now, my name isn't Will, but I think you know what we're driving at. We've covered some of the expenses on the project, so I'm not getting into that today. But I do want to talk about some of my philosophy when it comes to how I spend money and where and when I spend the money that I do on the projects as we move forward. One of the first things that I've learned in all my years of building cars is don't get yourself overwhelmed. I used to sit down with a parts catalog when I would get a new project car, and I would look at through all the things that I would need to buy in order to make that project happen. And I'd pretty much just close the catalog and hang my head in despair and say, I'm never going to be able to do that. But I wasn't willing to settle for that answer. Stitches has been a great example of how I have chosen to spend money, and I'll use it as the prototype, if you will, for my approach to every project that I do. Now, let's face it, when you're building cars to the level that I do, from the pieces of absolute garbage they are when I get them, most of them stripped out with absolutely nothing, there's a lot of stuff that you need. Now, you guys have been really good in helping me out, sending me your spares, selling me stuff really inexpensively and stuff like that, and that's been a blessing. But that also does line up with the way I do things anyway. I have relationships with other people in the area here, and we barter and we swap and spend very little money amongst each other, and usually it ends up me doing some paint work or some other work for somebody in exchange for some parts. You've seen me do that on John's 66 Belvedere. You've seen me do that on John's diesel Cummins pickup. We did that on my buddy Dave's $500 paint job on that D150, etc., etc. I would never say that my labor doesn't have value, but the value to me in a lot of those things is not having to expend cash that I usually don't have and getting the things that I need. For example, the $500 paint job provided me with a lot of 4-speed parts that I needed for Stitches. Clutch pedal assemblies, 4-speed transmission, shifter, all other stuff that I'm not thinking of right now that gets really expensive really fast. And to me, it's a winner-winner chicken dinner for both of us. When he gets his truck painted for a few $100, I get the parts that I need that I wouldn't probably be able to afford any other way. So it's good. But bigger picture is I try not to look at the entire project. I'm always aware, like I need a hood for Stitches, and I've got my buddy Dave down in Indiana has one for me that's perfect. We just haven't been able to coordinate and connect on getting it from him. And I do need an old dash pad, just a core to put my dash cap on, and he thinks he has one of those too, and so we're going to work some stuff out. But that doesn't mean that I'm not always looking, just in case there's something better somewhere else. I don't mind getting duplicates and selling off the best stuff and keeping the garbage for myself. But If you look at way back 386 episodes ago or whatever the heck it is in the Stitches playlist, early on, after I was done pounding out the roof, I think I had the frame rails in the car at that point, I was piecing together the back of the car and building the dual cutout rear valance, is that what it's called? For the exhaust, and I needed a rear bumper and I needed tail lights and backup lights. I had none of that stuff for that car. Of course, my first avenue was to check with friends and see who might have something kicking around that I could pick up for nothing or next to nothing or barter for or trade for or something like that. Nobody happened to have anything, but I ran across a pretty darn good set of tail lights and reverse lights, complete assembly with the trim for $300 on Marketplace. Now, it was Christmas, and I messaged the guy and I said, I'm really interested in this, but Christmas is coming. If you can hang on till after Christmas, I will get it from you, but I do understand that, you know, if somebody else comes along with the money. He said, no worries. He said, you know, I haven't had any movement on it, and chances are it'll be here, but yes, it's somebody else comes along, I'm going to sell it. But so we kept in communication, and sure enough, nobody came along. And right after Christmas, I said, will you take, I think it was $300 is what I paid for it. It's in the list if you go back to the costing episodes, $300, $350. Will you take that, including shipping? And he said, yes. I've had it on the shelf actually since the 80s. Just cleaning out my garage, and I want it gone. I'm glad you can use it. Now, if you know the price of taillights for a 70 Challenger, that was a good deal. It was the same thing for the rear bumper. I needed the rear bumper to get everything to fit properly on the back of the car. You cannot do panel alignment without being able to bolt on the stuff that's required to make everything look good. So I looked on Marketplace, and lo and behold, there was a parts reseller who had one that was a brand new but a takeoff. There was a couple blemishes in it, and it was dirt cheap. It was like $100. So I messaged the guy and I said, hey, you know, do you still have that? Yes, I do. Will you throw the shipping in for $100? I think we split the cost on shipping on that one. I don't remember the exact number, but it was an absolute steal for it was a brand new bumper. It just had marks in it where it had been bolted on the car, and it wasn't the quality that somebody wanted. It was absolutely perfect for Stitches. I try to approach the parts buying like I approach everything else on the channel, little bites at a time. If I run across an absolute deal I can't pass up for something I'm going to need, and if I have the cash money on hand to do it, I'll buy it and set it aside for the future. But, like, for example, the dash. Channel viewer Bill, Enforcer 505, I believe it was, sent me an instrument cluster that he had, a non-rally instrument cluster, but he didn't have the bezels or any of the other panels for the dash. I ran across a super deal from a guy down in Indiana. Matter of fact, it was my friend Dave now. We've become friends. And he had all the bezels and switches and everything I needed except the right heater control for Stitches. And so it was really inexpensive. I don't remember the cost on it anymore, but he was just wanting to get that stuff to somebody who could use it, get it out of his way, yada, yada. So I picked that up and set it aside for a little while, ended up putting it in the car just for fun, just to test fit everything. But I really didn't need it yet, but it was just a deal I couldn't pass up. So I have all the stuff now to put the dash together for the car, except for the bezel and AC controller for a non-rally dash car. Now, I'm not worried about that. I can modify the rally dash bezel I have in the car, because I don't plan to hook the heater up right away anyway, just something to fill the hole. But point was, it was a bite that I really didn't need to take, but it was just so delicious I couldn't pass it up. The little bite philosophy says, if you don't need it now, why go out and spend the money, unless it's an absolute steal that you just can't afford not to buy. And I think that's a great way to approach it, because especially when you're managing nearly a dozen projects in the shop, it can be completely overwhelming to think about the amount of money you have to spend. But this is a big but. I don't want you to miss it. No, I'm not talking about the Fat Fanny Ford. Why spend it if you don't need to yet? Okay? The second thing is, because I do things so inexpensively, I have less in all the projects in the shop than a lot of people have just in one car. So if you play your cards right and don't gamble, if you hold your money back as much as you can until you absolutely need what you need, but you're open to buying something if it's an absolute penny on the dollars deal, Little Bites can go a long way when it comes to buying parts. The reference to our fat-fendered Ford was not an accident, because I did want to circle around to that. That's one car that's been the exception. I bought almost everything I needed for that car right up front. I did it in 2 orders. I bought what I needed to get the body parts of it done, and then I ordered, a year later, I ordered all the trim and all the accessories that I needed for that car in a second order, and I spent a lot of money. That was an exception. I did not go Little Bites on that car. Part of it was I had a lump of cash when I got that car because I sold my 1931 Ford, and I wanted to reinvest it right away because I knew if I didn't reinvest it in something, it was going to get spent on nonsense. You know how money goes. And I felt it was better. I was either going to lock it into some kind of a longer term investment, or I was going to just buy the parts and squirrel them aside. And that's what I chose to do. I bought the low car shifter. I bought all of the GM brakes. I bought the drop tube axle. I bought the chassis engineering springs for the car. Bought the Nova rear end, bought the motor, built the transmission. All of that stuff was all done from the sale of the Model A. Then I actually had another car that I sold later, and I bought all of the stainless and all of that stuff. And that stuff adds up really fast. But that was an exception. I don't normally do a car like that, but it was because I had sold some cars and I wanted to put that money back in to the car collection investment part of my life before it got spent on hot dogs or something worse. One of the most ironic things is, if you really knew me as a person, I'm not somebody who thinks in little bites. I am a huge, big picture macro thinker, and little things in my natural personality don't matter. But I've learned that little things do matter, especially when it comes to money. When you've been through some financial hardships, you start to recognize that every penny matters. Let's face it, Elon Musk started his fortune with a penny just like everybody else, and he's worth billions. And I think I know that every wealthy person that I know really values the dollars and the pennies, and they don't take that for granted. They're very cautious about what they spend because, let's face it, money goes really, really fast. Now, we know that if you want your car to go really, really fast, you're going to have to spend some money too, and that's always the trade-off. So, drop your thoughts down there in the comments. I know for some people, money comes easier than time, and they would rather just spend the money. I have no problem with that. We all operate differently. But many others don't have cash reserves and can feel very discouraged that I can't build a car like your Pro Street car. I don't have much money in that car at all. Well, I can't build a car like that 69 Charger. Well, you know what? Joe really doesn't have a ton of money in that car either. Well, I can't build a car like that 47. Even though I did spend quite a bit, you'd be surprised compared to the value of the car. I don't have a ton in that either. It's a lot of sweat equity. So, the list goes on, but I want you to know that if you want to do these things on the more inexpensive side, if you're creative and you choose to not see things as obstacles, there's always a way through and always a way around. I appreciate y'all. I appreciate y'all. If I could learn how to speak English, it would be amazing. I appreciate y'all so much. I appreciate you joining me for these Talk About It Tuesdays. I always have fun sharing my thoughts with you. And like I said, drop it down there in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts and ideas on your approach to how you do the parts part and the spending part on your projects. All right, that'll do it. We will catch you on the next one. Well, I don't know if I'll catch you, but I'll be here and you can catch me. Well, if you catch me, then I'll probably see you too. All right, rock!